Hi, everybody. I'm Markos Moulitsas at Daily Coast, and I'm going to be doing top of the hour coverage of this very stressful election night. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Um, I obviously polls have only closed in two states, Indiana, Kentucky. Polls close at 6 p.m. Eastern in those states, which is in itself a travesty of democracy. But that's a battle for another day. What it does, though, is it gives us a little bit of an insight into what is going on in a couple of bellwether counties, and particularly one that everybody's looking at is Hamilton County, Indiana. This is a suburban Indianapolis county. It went for Trump 52-45 in 2020, but what makes it interesting is that it's becoming bluer and bluer every year, just like suburbs all across the country. So that's why it's considered sort of a bellwether. In 2012, Republicans won it by 34 points. 2016, it was Republicans plus 19, then plus 7 in 2020. And the early vote is in the county, which is about 65% of the vote. And right now, Kamala Harris is winning it by 1. That doesn't mean she's going to win it. It could be that election day vote skews more Republican. What we're seeing in a lot of places is that in 2020, because of COVID, Democrats really focused on the early vote and vote by mail. And Republicans didn't think COVID was a thing. Donald Trump was saying that early vote and vote by mail was voter suppression and an attempt to steal the vote. So what ended up happening is the early vote was very, very Democratic. And then the election day vote was very Republican. So that has changed this year. So it's incredibly difficult to do a apples to apples comparison. So we can't just look at the vote and compare it to. So that Hamilton County, the Republican Party has been trying to get Republicans to vote earlier. So in that case, is this Hamilton County result reflective of that? And is election day vote going to be more even or even more Democratic? We don't know. But what we do know right now, that what was a 7-point Republican county in 2020 is now, at least at this time, a Harris plus 1. Now, if that holds up, or even if we're talking a 2-3 point swing to the left in Hamilton County, that really does not bode well for Donald Trump, because he needs to eat into the Democrats' ability to expand its coalition in the suburbs. So that's the first thing we're looking at. How is Hamilton County going to shape up? We're also looking at some of the rurals, and right now in Kentucky, what we're seeing is that the rurals are actually, in at least a couple of key ones, they're more Republican than they were in 2020. So it looks like Trump is able to at least squeeze out more blood from that stone. Now, I haven't gotten a sense yet. It's still early. The vote's not fully in. Haven't gotten a sense yet, but the raw vote totals. So he could have a higher percentage, but fewer people are turning out in those rural districts. It might be a wash. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. But right now, at least in Hamilton County, which is a major bellwether, we're seeing some pretty good things right there. Another big story at the moment is in Pennsylvania. The city is expecting an extra 50 to 100,000 extra votes in Pennsylvania compared to 2020. And when people overlay the precincts that are turning out, the Puerto Rican districts are turning out. So it's very clear that the Madison Square Garden rally, where a Trump comedian said that Puerto Rico wasn't a floating island of garbage, that actually is having consequences, which is kind of amazing. And if it's having consequences in Pennsylvania, where there are 300,000 Puerto Ricans, it should have similar consequences in places like North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, where there are fewer Puerto Ricans, but they are in what are really tight states. And obviously, Latinos in general also were deeply offended by the racism that wasn't just Puerto Rico, but the entire Latino community. So that's a factor. And it looked like earlier this day, about an hour ago, Philadelphia actually surpassed its 2020 numbers. So it's already at above 2020 numbers. So what's going to be really, really important in Pennsylvania is not just Philadelphia itself and Pittsburgh, obviously, but also those collar counties around those cities that have been trending more and more blue over the years. And again, this is where Hamilton County in Indiana hopefully presents some kind of bellwether, because if we're seeing a shift in votes in Hamilton, then we can probably assume we're going to see similar shift in votes in suburbs in the rest of the country. Nancy Pelosi. When Nancy Pelosi speaks, you listen. Nobody can count votes like Nancy Pelosi. She's not a braggart. She doesn't exaggerate. She doesn't use hyperbole. And she told CNN today that she is very confident that Democrats have the votes to take the House. To me, it seems pretty obvious. The numbers look pretty good in polling leading up to the election. And furthermore, Republicans only truly took the House in 2022 because of very, very low turnout in California and New York. And so there are, in those two states, about 8 House seats that are in danger of coming back home to the Democratic Party with presidential level turnout. And that's not all, but those are there's a big chunk of House seats available for Democrats to pick up in those seats in those states, and it does not surprise me that Pelosi is actually confident. I have predicted in my own prediction thread on Daily Kos, I predicted that the Democrats would probably end up at around 220 seats to the Republican 215. So I think Pelosi would agree. And Las Vegas. Any of you guys that have been following Las Vegas early vote, it hasn't looked particularly good for Democrats. This is a state that again in 2020, the Democratic machine really focused on the early vote, and Republicans did not. And so Democrats had this huge sort of firewall that they were able to bank, and Republicans were not able to make that up in the rural counties on election day. So this year it's looked different. Republicans have really focused a lot on that early vote, and they actually won the early vote, and they won it by I don't remember offhand right now, but it was a handy amount. It was about 30,000 raw votes, or about 3 to 4% in the popular vote. And so there's been a lot of dooming and a lot of like, oh, okay, Nevada's lost and Dems aren't going to win it. Now, John Ralston, he's the dean of the Nevada Press Corps. He predicted, surprisingly, kind of surprised everybody, he predicted that Harris would eke out a very, very narrow victory. He has never been wrong in a presidential prediction. Doesn't mean he can't be wrong this time, but he has a solid track record and he's reality based. And he predicted a very, very narrow Harris victory. And a lot of it was based on Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader from Nevada, passed away this year. He built this incredible machine that sort of built as a foundation of the culinary union in Las Vegas. And they're probably the best get out the vote operation in the entire country, bar none. And so I think he was banking that the vote was close enough in the early vote that Democrats would just be able to squeeze out enough votes. Well, he may be right, but in fact, it looks more and more like he'll be right, because as of 3 p.m. local time in Las Vegas, Democrats in Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is at, had already exceeded their 2020 numbers, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. What it does say is that a lot of that early vote of 2020, those Democrats have shifted to day of voting, and we're seeing that all across the country. But Nevada is one of the few places where Republicans actually won the early vote, and so seeing this like mass Democratic turnout that isn't just sort of making up for based on 2020 numbers, but is absolutely blowing it away. 3 p.m. That's 4 hours before polls were going to be closed. Las Vegas had already exceeded, Clark County, the entire county had already exceeded their 2020 numbers. So right now, we're just waiting. States are going to be closing here pretty soon. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at some bellwether counties. We're looking at turnout. And right now, we're kind of guessing at things. And if you're looking at those exit polls that the networks are pushing out, don't even look at those. It's not going to tell you anything. So that's where we are. For continuing coverage, I'll be here at the top of the hour to talk about what's happening. And also, you can go to dailykos.com for to join the conversation and to see just the ongoing coverage as the night goes on. So thank you very much. Catch you guys again in an hour.